Hello, everybody. Welcome back to our channel. This is the Buddhist Meditator. This is beginning meditation instruction and also general Buddhist philosophical discussion and guidance. I'm Lama Dawa Zangpo. I'm a traditionally trained practitioner Lama in the Kagyu tradition of Tibetan Buddhism. So my orientation is towards the Tibetan Buddhist system of practice. So we do this every week, and we have Tal with us tonight and most nights. Tal is a beginner and kind of learning the ropes as far as meditation goes, and Buddhism as well. So we have to distinguish meditation and Buddhism. Not all meditation is Buddhist. So that's what we do, and we warmly invite you, the viewer, the listener, the watcher, to submit questions, anything you would like to see discussed. And in fact, if you would like to join us, you're welcome to. You can come on live and Zoom with us if you would like. We'd love to have your participation. So without further ado, welcome wherever you are, and we hope this is of relevance to you and your practice. So Tal, why don't you start with the question tonight?
What are some common mistakes, practice mistakes with quotes, because, it's part of practicing, right? What common practice mistakes do people make when they first start meditating?
Let me count the ways.
Yeah, right.
I think Shakespeare said that.
Yeah.
No, there's so many. And
what is the most detrimental, I guess, is the question.
Well, the most detrimental is not being consistent and starting and stopping, not giving yourself a chance, and giving into your impatience. And if it feels a little boring or a little unexciting, to just dismiss it and jump to something else. So you have to give it a chance. You have to give yourself a chance. This is about cultivating patience, which is part of developing, you could say, spiritual or emotional maturity. So, we tend to be entitled Western people, and we want everything with immediate gratification. So I think I have to say that that's the most common and the biggest obstacle for many people, is we come with expectations. The interesting thing about meditation and the Buddhist approach is we are being taught to learn how to drop our expectations, because expectations, they color our outcome. They fill us up with something that then we're looking for. And the whole idea is to be fresh, to be in the moment, to be present, to be now, and to be spontaneous, therefore. So I would say that's the single biggest thing. The other thing is we bring our baggage to our meditation seat, and we even bring and we may have been taught other meditation systems, and we bring that too. So check your baggage at the door, check your luggage at the door, and come with a fresh mind. And if you just approach the practice in a very kind of simple and down-to-earth way, that's the main thing. But it's to really give it and yourself a chance, because it's so worthwhile, it's so important, it's of such great benefit. And I find it kind of breaks my heart to see people that don't give it a chance, because they never get a chance then to really experience the benefits. But it takes time, like anything. It doesn't necessarily come the first time you sit down to meditate. There's a learning curve. We have to make mistakes. We have to be willing to kind of go through the forest, go through the process. The other thing that I guess my personal bias is, the other mistake in quotes, mistake, is to not come to Buddhist meditation with a grounding in basic Buddhist sort of philosophy. And I've said this many times, and I'll continue to say it. This is not just learning a technique, because many schools of meditation will teach you a meditation technique, and Buddhism can do the same thing. But that does not do justice. I really feel so strongly that the context that we practice in, the basic, big picture understanding, and then and the sense of the role of meditation, why we're doing it, what's the point? I have to say what I've said many times. It's not to get rid of our headaches and lower our blood pressure. It's not to just alleviate stress. There's something very different. It's the bar is higher than that. So when we really kind of do some study of Buddhist, for lack of a better word, Buddhist philosophy, we understand that this is about trying to liberate ourselves, because we need a foundation of understanding. What does it mean when the Buddha says that life is full of challenges and difficulties and stress and anxiety, which we translate as suffering? And if we think this is just a simple one life that we have, and then we die and it's all over and nothing ever happens after that, then probably it doesn't matter. But it's very actually important to at least contemplate and come to some personal understanding when we talk about things like reincarnation, the idea that suffering doesn't just stop when this life ends. That there's a continuation of experience of some kind of, there's some continuity that may go on for lifetime after lifetime. And to kind of contemplate that, to really work with that, to get an understanding. And again, I always say in Buddhism and in most things in life, we should not go on blind faith. And this is no different. So just because I'm saying, oh yes, we have many lifetimes, or the Buddha said, or Buddhist teachers say things like that. No, we shouldn't just accept that on face value. But there's a lot of reasons why that is taught, that if we really look deeply into it, it starts to make more and more sense. And, suffering is more than just getting a splinter in your finger, or stubbing your toe, or, having a stomach ache. It's more profound. And people say, oh, I don't want to hear about suffering. It's so depressing. Well, it's honest, it's sobering. And they say, well, but life's full of happiness and joy, and we should focus on the positive things. But that's also true. But the fundamental sort of, you could say, ground teaching of Buddhism is everything changes, nothing is permanent. And we need to actually contemplate these things deeply. So our happiness is not permanent. It comes to an end. Our relationships come to an end. Our loved ones, our own life, it all will end. And at that point, we have to deal with suffering, pain, worry, fear. And is there a way to live life that has deep meaning, has profound significance, and deep contentment and peace? Because the Buddha didn't just teach, oh, there's suffering and pain and anxiety and stress. There were 4 noble truths. That's only one of them. The 3rd and 4th deal with the fact that there's an end, but it's our efforts. But the point of this, all of this, is that we have this amazing potential, and the ball's in our court. We are empowered. We can do something about our situation. We can improve it. We can make it better. We can find ways to develop our wisdom so that we're not blindsided when things maybe go bad. We develop, I'm sorry, one more thing. We develop contentment. We develop some kind of true peace of mind. And it's not just being passive peace of mind. It means peace of mind with wisdom, wisdom that understands. So we don't feel like we're just sort of confused or making compromises as we go through our life. It's a life of integrity. It's a life of confidence. So those are things I believe are really worth striving for. Confidence, the confidence that we know things, that we understand things, that we're not just sort of being victimized by the universe or something. That it's not just random and bad things happen to us. It's not like that. This is about empowering ourselves. But that only comes through taming our mind and developing deep insight. And that's what meditation does for us. Okay, sorry. Now you had another follow-up.
No worries, of course. Is it the Buddhist perspective that the multiple lifetimes are to become the Buddha, to get it right, so to speak?
It's a little bit of a simplification, but yes, I think you can say that. I think that is fairly accurate. That there is a path, there's a progression. It doesn't mean we're just on a straight linear path to getting wiser and wiser life after life after life. We can make mistakes, we can backslide. That's why it's important to not give into sort of negative habits or develop new negative habits, because those things can sort of pull us down. It takes, to develop that traction through your lifetimes, it takes some kind of, I think, commitment, but also, again, confidence. Confidence that this is a path, well, worth taking. It's a path that will lead us to where we want to go. And that's where some study of what the Buddha really taught, what his life was like, what his message sort of was, what he stands for, the example, and more than that, countless generation after generation after generation since then that have followed this path and achieved remarkable things, really achieved incredible breakthroughs and awakening. It's not just the Buddha did it and we can't, the Buddha did it, case closed. It's not like that. The case is not closed. He showed what's possible, and many people have kind of followed in those footsteps. And as 21st century Americans, we can do the exact same thing. Because we're working with the mind, and technology and all the things of the modern world, that doesn't change the fundamentals of the mind. And the mind generates thoughts, and thoughts lead to opinions and judgments, and thoughts lead to expectations. And those are the things that tend to derail us. Thoughts also lead to emotions. We have emotions like prideful emotions. Pride is a cause of suffering when we feel tremendous pride. Jealousy, tremendous suffering if we feel envious of someone else. Impatience and anger, when we get really frustrated or really angry at something, that's our own suffering. We get angry at something or someone else. It doesn't hurt them. It hurts us.
Ain't that the irony of that?
Yeah, exactly. And attachment, strong attachments. We love things. We're human beings. Love is an amazing emotion. It's wonderful. We love to love. But strong or sort of almost unreasonable attachments and stuff will lead to tremendous suffering if we lose what we love. And we will. Not because we're necessarily betrayed, but because of impermanence. We may get a dread disease and have to leave what we love, and that's painful. They may get a disease or die or something happens, leads to our tremendous suffering. And then what? We have to deal with the pain of loss and all that. And I'm not saying we suppress that. Buddhism's not saying that. It's not talking about denial. It's talking about at least understanding that things do change. But really, yes, we can all understand this on an intellectual level. And this is sort of the key point here. Meditation is helping us move beyond just a conceptual or intellectual understanding of these kinds of very basic concepts. And we admit they're very basic, that everything changes in this universe, that nothing lasts forever. But to really get it on a very, very deep level where it actually changes our approach to how we live our life, that comes through meditation. That's why the practice of meditation is central to Buddhism.
So in that vein of practicing, is there a technique to bring one's mind back to, in the beginners, to the breath? Is there a way to, because yes, you're noticing it and then bringing it back to the breath. You're noticing that you have strayed or you have been sidelined by your thoughts, and you bring it back to the breath. But is there something that can hasten that, or is that the practice itself only?
Tal,
Yeah.
that is the practice.
Okay.
Full stop. That's it. There's nothing else. There's no magic other thing. That is it. And you asked in the beginning, what's one of the biggest sort of obstacles or mistakes? It's not realizing that that is the simple basic thing. And then we start looking for other remedies, other answers, when that was the answer all along. It's applying that remedy. That is it. That's it. That is, we may think, oh, somehow that's not good enough. That's not sufficient. Well, guess what? It is sufficient and it is good enough. And it's how you do it.
I mean, not that that's not hard enough,
Yeah, right, right. No. So that's why I said people get bored or they think there's got to be some shortcut or something. No, that's called paying your dues. It's like, you have to do that. It's how you develop those muscles. Whether you're shooting pool or playing tennis or meditating, you have to do these things over and over and over and over and over to really get good at it, right? At anything, playing the guitar, I don't care what it is, ice skating, whatever. You have to do it over and over and over. And people dedicate countless hours to practicing their tennis stroke or their, whatever.
Boring though is a very difficult sell,
Of course.
We're in the world of TikTok and movies and all this, everything trying to grab your attention.
Sure, exactly. That's why I started out, and that's why I keep saying context is everything. So we need to start with, we say, the 4 thoughts that turn the mind towards the Dharma. It's one of the fundamental, core, basic, preliminary, we call it preliminary teachings of Buddhism, of Tibetan Buddhism in particular. Now, I'm not talking about, for those of you who are watching or kind of new, I'm not talking about the 4 noble truths, which is the truth of suffering, the truth that suffering has causes, the truth that there's an end of suffering, and there's a path that leads to the end of suffering. That's separate. That's not what I'm talking about here. So let's be clear. I'm talking about thoughts that turn the mind to Dharma. That's a Tibetan phrase that's how it's translated in English. The mind turnings, things that turn the mind towards our attention kind of in the right direction, so to speak. And those are, and this is the framework, this is the context, this is the foundation That's why they're called the preliminaries, because they're done before anything, quote, more advanced is undertaken. You have to have a strong, the classic analogy, right? To build any kind of a big building, you need a strong foundation. I mean, sort of common sense. Very much exactly the same is true here with meditation. So, what are those? What are these 4 mind turnings? We've discussed them in the past. It's worth hearing them over and over and over. And not just hearing them like right now from me and for a few minutes, but to contemplate them. And there's books and there's teachings and I can elaborate on this in future videos. If, again, those of you watching, if you would like to hear more about it, I'm more than happy to discuss this. Let me just say what they are for tonight. The first one, and they're generally kind of in this order. We contemplate the fact that we should not take this life for granted, that it's a precious opportunity, that it's unique to be born. So let's say this: all the sentient beings in the universe, or even just on this world, on planet Earth, third rock from the sun, all the beings that inhabit this universe, that are incarnated, that are born in and die in this universe, in this time, insects, animals of all kinds. Humans are a very small slice of the pie compared to all the life on this planet. Sentient life, not talking about plants, sentient life. Insects, let's say, on up. Humans we're outnumbered billions to 1. There's very few of us relative to all possibilities of being born. So to be born as a human being is a rare thing. It's a rare opportunity. We should not take it for granted. And to be born with our faculties, like all of our senses intact, fairly healthy physical body. So we've got our health, we've got a mind that can think and be clear and can understand things logically, and we can read and study and hear teachings. That's even rarer of all the human beings, to have all these conditions. And furthermore, to be born in a time when an enlightened being like the Buddha taught, and then those teachings have been preserved and propagated. For all those conditions to come together, that gives us what we call this precious human opportunity. That's the first mind turning to contemplate, is really contemplate the fact that, if we really think about all of that and really get it, like, okay, this is not a life I need to just sort of take for granted or waste. It is a special and rare opportunity. That's the very first thought. And there's many, many further explanations and teachings that go into great detail and help us even understand this more fully. So I'm just giving you sort of the very bare bones basics here. Anyway, that's the first thought that turns the mind towards the Dharma. The second thought that turns the mind towards the Dharma even further is the fact that everything is impermanent, which we already talked about a few minutes ago. Meaning, this precious human life I have can end at any moment. I mean, I could just have a massive heart attack and die on the spot right here in front of your eyes. It does happen. Or I'll have a disease, or I've got cancer in my body, I'm not even aware of it somewhere, and that could grow and grow, and I could die in 2 weeks or 3 days or 6 months. Anyway, or in a car accident. I mean, the point is, again, not to be depressing and grim, but to be clear that, as they say, the causes of one's death are innumerable. Innumerable. It means we can't even begin to count of how many things could happen that could end our life. And it happens all the time. People die and drop dead all the time. And babies die, and in the womb they die, and children die, and teenagers die, and young adults die, not just old people. So again, that's the second thought is, I have this, so the first two kind of go together. I have this precious opportunity, and I don't know how long it's going to last. Therefore, I should turn my mind towards things that are of significance and matter so I don't waste this opportunity while I have it.
And just to add to that, in impermanence, you have the opposite, the other side as well, like your feelings of pleasure and happiness and joyousness. Those are also impermanent.
We're going to get to that in a second, Tal.
Oh, sorry. This is my bad.
So the first two thoughts are what I just said: precious human life and the fact that everything's impermanent. Then the third teaching or thought that turns the mind towards the Dharma, and meaning towards the Dharma, what does that mean? It means if we're moving towards something, we're also moving kind of away from something else. It means away from frivolous, worldly distractions that have no real significance, in the sense that they don't really lead to any genuine happiness. Our new car, or our, new clothing, or anything like that, or the meal that we just got from Uber Eats or whatever. None of that makes us permanently happy in any way. Doesn't contribute to our goal of trying to become more content people. So the third thought is, we use the word karma a lot, and people have various notions of what they think that means. In this context, karma means, as a sort of a translation of, we say, causes and effects. Meaning, again, this is a root kind of understanding that helps turn the mind towards Dharma. Causes and consequences means everything has causes, and everything that happens has results. So nothing happens just completely randomly and spontaneously with no sort of reason behind it in this universe. That's very important. We need to think about this. So if the result we want is to be awake, or to be enlightened, or to be content, what are the causes of that? And even as many of us have heard the Dalai Lama say, a famous quote, all happiness comes from actually desiring the welfare of others. All of our suffering comes from wanting happiness only for ourselves. So the idea being to sort of work towards relinquishing being overly selfish or self-centered, and having a more spacious, more magnanimous, more inclusive kind of heart. Live a good life, live a proper life in the sense of basic human ethics, meaning kindness to others, the golden rule. That's very Buddhist. Do unto others as you would want them to do unto you. Treat others fairly, honestly. Don't lie, don't cheat, don't steal, don't kill, don't hurt. It's kind of, the Buddhist commandments are really no different from, the ones that we're all familiar with from the Western kind of traditions and Bible.
The monotheistic. Yeah.
So it's an ethical life. And that means we need to be mindful, because every thought we think, karma, about causes and results. It means if we have a thought, that has consequences, or it leads to repercussions. Usually what it boils down to is a thought will lead to other thoughts along the same vein, or it reinforces a certain pattern of thinking, certain kinds of expectations or opinions or judgments. So thoughts perpetuate a certain kind of pattern in our mind and how we think and how we behave. So the whole point of mindfulness and of meditation is actually to not be seduced by our thoughts, not take our thoughts so seriously, not buy into them, and develop some freedom from our thinking, from our thoughts themselves. Anyway, all this is kind of peripheral discussion to what we're talking about, which is the third of the 4 thoughts that turn the mind to Dharma. Let's go back. For those of us that have short memories, myself included. The first thought was this precious opportunity, this rare opportunity of being born as a healthy, functioning, reasonably intelligent human being, with all these situations available that allow us to actually hear and learn about Dharma, and then appreciate it, and then put it into practice. That's the first thought. The second is the fact that, again, there's no time to waste. Let's not be frivolous. Let's not fritter away our time, because we don't know when it's going to end, when our time is up, because it's impermanent, because everything is. So that's the second thought. Then the third we just finished discussing is this notion of causes and consequences, causes and results, or actions or activities, physical activities and actions, mental activities and actions, and spoken, verbal. So we talk about that at other times in sort of Dharma teachings, body, speech, and mind. That's what makes a sentient being or a human being. We have a body, we have a physical form, we are able to communicate and talk and share ideas and interact with others of our species. And we have thoughts, obviously, that we think. So that's the third, causes and conditions. The fourth is what you alluded to a couple minutes ago when I said you were jumping the gun. The fourth is the fact that if we really stop, is the fourth thought that turns the mind away from the world and towards Dharma. What is it? The fourth is that everything in this world, from the food we eat to the clothes we wear to the possessions we get, relationships, family, all the things we think of as being the things that give us happiness and joy and satisfaction, they're all things that ultimately we say can have the seeds of disappointment, frustration, suffering. Maybe disappointment's one of the best words. That things let us down. That great meal that we had ends up giving us a stomach ache, or puts on an extra couple pounds that we're trying to lose, whatever, right? Or it's a delicious, satisfying meal and we love it. But then afterwards, then what? You pay the bill and
it's fleeting.
It's fleeting. You get hungry again or whatever. I mean, it's not lasting. That's the point. So I'm not saying there's bad things about having a new car or a new relationship or a loving family or a good meal. Oh, that's great. But if you think that's we use this interesting word, if you think that's your refuge, meaning that's where you can go for ultimate protection from the world, from the cold, hard world, that it's going to protect you from, your family's not going to protect you from getting sick or dying. Your great meal is not going to protect you from getting sick or dying. Your new car is not going to protect you from getting sick or dying or losing a loved one. So the idea that there's real happiness in the outer world, the external world, the world we live in and inhabit, there's no real, lasting, true, deep happiness there. If you put your eggs in that basket and think that's where your happiness is going to be, that's, at least according to classical Buddhist teaching, which is what we're doing here, that's kind of a mistake. You're putting your eggs in the wrong basket. What's the right basket? The right basket is developing inner peace of mind, contentment, and wisdom, and love, a loving heart. Those are the things that you'll take with you when you die. Because a lot of this often we say Dharma and meditation and Dharma practice and study is to prepare us to die. Because what does happen when we die? Now we're getting to the crux of the matter here, right? Because we're going to die. Every one of us, with no exception. We may think we're going to live forever. Most of us have a certain naive kind of, we don't think about it. Here I am. Everything's pretty groovy, hunky dory. Here I am. I'm not going to think about dying. But when you die, you say goodbye to your beloved pet or your beloved spouse or your child, your children, or whatever, or your car or your house or your wealth that you've worked so hard to accumulate and protect and invest and invest emotionally, and then you're dying, you're on your deathbed. It's like, oh, somebody else is going to inherit my wealth. Maybe they'll do bad things with it. Maybe I don't want those people to have it. Or my spouse who I love, what's going to happen to him or her? Maybe they'll forget about me. Maybe they'll find someone else. I mean, we have all kinds of deep fears and concerns. Who knows? But we have those attachments, and they're attachments to things of the world. Now, that's normal. It's natural. But this fourth thought that turns the mind towards Dharma means don't put your eggs in that basket, in the sense of don't really invest all of your sense of that's where my happiness is going to come from, because that's possibly naive and short-sighted. So where do you put your hope? Where do you put your refuge? Now we're circling back. This is a key fundamental concept in Buddhism that I don't think I've ever even talked about with you. The beginning of the Buddhist path is called taking refuge. Refuge. One translation I saw early on when I was studying Buddhism was safe harbor. Where do we find safe harbor? If there's a hurricane coming, or as the Bob Dylan song goes, shelter from the storm. Where do we find safe harbor? Where do we find that which can protect us? Protect us from suffering, from anxiety. Where does it come from? It comes from our own efforts in Buddhism. It doesn't come from God. It doesn't come from even the Buddha. The Buddha taught truth that we can understand and apply. So what is refuge in the Buddhist sense? We say we take refuge in the Buddha. This is what I haven't taught to you before. We take refuge in the Buddha, meaning the Buddha is the teacher who came into this world as a human being, but through his practice in meditation, the things that he taught is teaching us to do, he perfected himself. He overcame his expectations, his judgments, his opinions, his monkey mind, his attachments to the world, his putting eggs in the wrong baskets. He overcame all of that, purified himself, basically perfected what it means to become a human being fully. We take refuge in that as the model, as the role model of what a human being's potential is. That's what it means to take refuge in the Buddha. Not in Albert Einstein, not in Leo Messi, not in, somebody that's achieved great things in the world, but somebody that's actually mastered everything that one could master in terms of your mind and how it works, and sense of self, and true love and compassion and kindness. So we take refuge in the Buddha as that example, as that teacher, as that being who is lighting the lamp or pointing the way, or had trod the path that we can now there's a path in the darkness, in the forest, in the wilderness that we can follow because somebody has done it and they got to the goal. So we take refuge in the Buddha. Then we also take refuge, not just in the Buddha, we take refuge in the Dharma, meaning we take refuge in what he taught, because that's even more important. If the Buddha didn't teach anything, there's no point in even taking refuge in the Buddha. It'd be meaningless. The Buddha cannot save us. But if we apply the teachings that he realized, the breakthroughs, the understanding that he achieved, and then shared, that's called the Dharma, the teachings that point to the truth, that are authentic, that are unmistaken, that are not misleading, that are true. So we take refuge in those teachings as the things that we apply, the principles, the teachings that we can contemplate and meditate on. So that's the second, we say, object of refuge. We call these the three jewels because they're so precious. So the Buddha is the one jewel, the teachings, which we call the Dharma, is the second, and the third we say is the Sangha, meaning all the followers that came afterwards that actually, not just because they call themselves a Buddhist, that's not something to take refuge in, but to take refuge in those who proved his point, that followed in those footsteps ahead of us and actually also broke through, actually also perfected or achieved very, very high levels of realization. We take refuge there too, as the sort of a community of examples. So that's called taking refuge. This is the foundation of Buddhist practice for more than 2,000 years. And it's as relevant and as necessary today. Now, again, your original question, what are the obstacles or the mistakes people make? This is another big mistake, that people think, I don't need that. I don't need to take refuge in these things, because we're modern Americans. We're modern, sophisticated people, and we're taught to be really independent, especially as Westerners. We're really taught this, that the self-made person, and I don't have to answer to anybody. Nobody's better than me, or wiser or whatever. I'll just do it my own way. And there's a certain, I'd call it a combination. It's naive and it's a little bit arrogant. But it's how we're taught. We are raised this way, many of us. We're really taught that. And we think it's, it's good because it empowers us. We need to be confident and strong, which is true. We do need to be confident and strong, but not arrogant and not naive. So we need to find that balance and maybe even bring in some humility, that we don't have all the answers. I'd say the Buddhist path begins when we talk about the noble truth of suffering. That just means an honest assessment of the fact that I ain't perfect. I don't have all the answers. I do have attachments and all these things I tend to do and certain habits that cause me to shoot myself in the foot, so to speak. I make mistakes, and the only person that really hurts is myself. But the point isn't about hurting myself or hurting yourself. The point is that we're stuck. And that first noble truth that's called of suffering means just acknowledging that I'm not perfect. My life's not perfect. I make mistakes, and therefore I have stress. I have anxiety. I have insecurities. That's what we mean by suffering, really. And that's just being honest. So the path starts with self-honesty. And if we don't start with that, then we're starting with a place maybe with a little too much pride or some subtle kind of arrogance, something like that, which is suspicious, frankly. it's probably I want to say it's a terrible mistake from sort of a big picture spiritual standpoint. So humble. And humble doesn't mean we're beating ourselves up. It just means we're being.
It takes courage to be honest with oneself.
Say again?
It takes courage to be honest with oneself.
Maybe so. You think?
I do. I think that's why there's so much denial of death. Because you have to be courageous to admit that you're going to die.
Well, we're good at suppressing ourselves and suppressing things that, so-called bad news. Yeah, maybe it's for sure. Fear is part of it. But that's why we have these teachings. That's why we take refuge in the Dharma and the Buddha, because they're telling us something in a very honest way that we may not have heard from our school teachers or our parents very much growing up, or from movies where, you always win, the hero always wins in the end, and, living happily ever after, and, good defeats evil, and all the rest of it, but we're not living a Hollywood movie. So that's why that precious human birth part of it doesn't just mean that I have this body. It means I also have access to these teachings. That's also what makes this life precious. So again, many people learn meditation, but to answer your original question, the mistake I think many beginners make is they don't do these contemplative kind of, pondering these truths because that's what will keep you going when you get bored.
And I guess to wrap it up here, would you suggest that that's done through the meditative process or beforehand, so to speak?
Great question. Kind of both, but actually beforehand. It's sort of separate. So that's a really great question, because we say, this is again what's traditionally said is you hear, meaning you hear or read or study the teachings. So you can read them, there's lots of great books and things. You can just read all kinds of stuff, or on YouTube, or go to a lecture by a great master or a teacher or somebody. So you hear, because originally it was oral teachings, it was all spoken. It wasn't written down necessarily. So that's why we say hear. So hearing, meaning receiving the teachings, then contemplating them, meaning you sort of really mull it over and think about it, then meditating. Meditating and contemplating are a little different. Meditating is sort of the marinating process where it sort of seeps into you, and maybe you get more of an intuitive understanding of these things. So yes, again, it's easy to teach the technique of meditation. Follow your breath, watch your breath, watch the breathing, label it or identify it. Come back when you find yourself straying and being distracted, and so on and so forth. That's just technique. But it's a very important place to complement that with, supplement that with spending a little bit of time really, again, contemplating or reading further about like these 4 thoughts that turn the mind. Because again, you can look at it from different angles, get different sort of analogies or metaphors or things that will help you understand really what's meant by these things, so that you develop confidence. That's the point. That's the whole point, for you to develop confidence in these teachings so that they are your own, that you own them, you embody them, you know they're true from your own experience, not because you're taking the Buddha's word for it, or some teacher's word for it, or some book's word for it. You have to see for yourself if this is true or not. that this is a precious opportunity, that everything in this life is impermanent, that our attachments and expectations and putting our eggs in the worldly basket is right or not, and that everything has consequences. So we need to kind of do the right things so we get the right outcomes. Those 4 thoughts that turn the mind, we need to dwell on them. We need to focus, contemplate them. We need to spend some time. It's separate from meditation. And I really encourage you, and I really encourage everybody watching, to spend some time on these, not just once for 5 or 10 minutes. You can do it. You can even do it every day. Before your meditation, there are recitations in the Tibetan tradition and possibly in other traditions that are, liturgies that are written down, and you can recite them. And as you recite them, the words, you can contemplate the meaning.
Well, as you say it, I think that makes sense to me to include it in the meditation practice.
Yeah.
In terms of doing it beforehand and
yes,
having it in that time period.
That's exactly right. So let's say you have a 20-minute meditation session. You can take first 5 minutes sitting there silently or verbally. You read it or recite, where you take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha, as I said before, the 3 jewels. Then you contemplate these 4 thoughts. Again, you can do a little recitation. Off camera, I can give this to you. Anybody watching, if you're interested in this, the viewers, we can certainly get this to you. We can even do this in another video if it's helpful to people. So I was starting to say, if you have a 20-minute session, you can spend 5 minutes just doing those things. It sort of sets you right, kind of lays the groundwork, the foundation, then spend the next 15 minutes of the 20 in actual, working with the breath, with the meditation. Or if it's a 25-minute session, 5 and 20 or whatever. Or if it's a 30-minute session, 5 minutes and then 25 minutes meditating. Well, and then at the very end, it's good to seal the practice, we say, where we say we dedicate the merit. Again, another short little prayer is traditionally said, by the benefit of this practice, may all beings also achieve enlightenment, et cetera, et cetera. So, and again, these are easily found and translated from the Tibetan. Again, have been recited by meditators and practitioners for, well over 1,000 years. And it's all available.
Thank you, Lama Dawa. I appreciate you. And if anybody has questions, please comment below. Especially if you wanted to join us on this podcast, please let us know. The Buddhist Meditator at gmail.com. You can reach us there as well. Like, subscribe, share. And again, please comment. Thank you, Lama Dawa. Again, appreciate you.
My pleasure. Thank you. Thank you all.